Hello and welcome to Culture Illiterate, a podcast with four friends overthink comic book movies. And I'm not going to lie to y'all, this episode may suck because this is our third attempt at recording this particular episode. I am the first of your hosts, Jake. I had actually come up, my fun fact is that I had come up with a new fun fact to replace the fun fact I'd used on the first two attempts, which is that I could not ice skate, let alone uphill. But now I've forgotten what that fun fact to replace the old fun fact was. So I'll stick with that original fun fact that I just said.
That was the worst intro you've ever given.
I know, I'm kind of leaning.
Just retire already.
I'm kind of leaning into it. So with me, my friends and co-hosts, say your stuff.
My name is Jason, and
that's it.
My fun fact is that Ray Romano set a record at one point for being the highest paid TV actor per episode for his hit show Everybody Loves Raymond.
Never watched.
Me neither. I just think it's funny that Ray Romano's the record holder.
That's awesome. Well, I'm too tired to Google a fact right now.
Matt, we can't hear. Matt. You're going to have to start over. We're not hearing anything.
Damn it.
He's trying to do this while he's falling asleep.
1 second. I realize what the problem is that I'm using
Is it
my
that you're
left
laying
earbud.
down?
Yeah, I'm using my left earbud, and the left earbud, see?
Yeah, that is it.
So maybe sit up, buddy.
No, I'm just going to use the right earbud. See, now the problem has been solved.
Yes, it
Whatever.
has.
Okay, whatever.
Hey,
Do your
just take
thing.
it from the top, Matt.
Okay, so basically I have no fun fact, and I'm too lazy to Google one, so just going to move on to Sean.
You don't remember what you tried last time?
No.
We didn't even get your name.
Oh,
yeah,
hi,
you didn't say your
I'm
name,
Matt.
dumbass.
Move on.
This is a disaster.
Oh god, this is about as great as the first recording. I am Sean. My fun fact is prior to us watching this, which this movie specifically being Blade, I did not know that Michael Morbius was supposed to be in it. I will not say more than that, but I did not know that.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that later, which was more of a thing the first time we did this when it was new information to Matt and Jason.
Yeah. And I know none of us
I
have
can
mentioned
still
Rex
fake
at
my
all.
reaction if you want me to.
Nah,
Yeah, I can
no.
still fake it.
No,
yeah.
listen, I'm going to. I'm gonna fake it.
And I know none
That's
of
what
us
your
have.
girlfriends always say.
Jesus Christ. I know none of us have mentioned Rex at all, so I'll have my one rec that I've mentioned 3 times already, and that is watch Made in Abyss. It's a pretty good show. Don't read it. The guy who made it is a pervert, or seems to be a pervert, so yeah. I recommend the show, though.
All right. That was interesting. I just got a call. I think everything's fine, but I just got a call from an unidentified number. So things are going great. This is a cursed episode.
We can't get it to work.
I had a bunch of recs that I rapid fired last time, but I don't really remember all of them. So I'm just going to go with like the number one that I want to hit because it's one of my favorite movies of 2022, Bones and All. Going blind. I went
Yes.
in Bones and All and watched, went in blind entirely to Bones and All on Thanksgiving night with my whole family, and it was quite the experience. Watch it. It really moved me. I think it's a wonderful, beautiful film. I'm also going to real quick recommend the city of Portland. Just took a trip there to San Francisco and to Portland with Bria.
I want to kill you.
Jason loves Portland but has not been. But if you're looking for a place to travel in the continental United States, I highly recommend Portland. It was a lovely city, great food, great coffee, great drinks, good people. It was a really nice
Was California
small town
worse?
type of city.
Was California worse then?
No, Portland, I had less of an idea of what to expect.
So you had no expectations and it surprised you all the same.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking forward to it, but I knew, I had more of an idea of what San Francisco was like. I had no real concept of Portland.
I can give like a unrecommendation,
Okay.
All right.
and it has something to do with a city that gets a lot of buzz, but I think is heavily overrated. And I think that city is Miami. I think Miami fucking sucks. It's been hyped up to be like this utopia of a vacation and stuff like that. But I spent my time over there. Everything's like $10 overpriced, especially the food. Don't even get me started with the fucking food. And then everyone is like desperate for money. If you try to pay for something, especially food. Yeah, again, it comes back to food. You have to like skip like 3 screens in which it tells you to tip. And then the weather is too fucking hot. I felt like my neck was on fire the entire time I was there. And there are too many sports cars, and so I can't even enjoy a leisure walk on the fucking street without some fucking boondoggy just blazing down this fucking street.
Okay.
Well, anyway,
Alternatively, Portland was very affordable.
I had a couple wrecks. First and foremost, since we're talking about Blade this episode, I want to recommend the hyperpop artist Blade, spelled the way Blade is spelled, but with 2 E's instead of 1. Bladee. Great artist, had a great album that came out this year. I'm Slowly But Surely Losing Hope is a great song from that record. I was way more excited about this the first time we recorded this episode. Now I've lost it all. But I do want to recommend also another album that just came out recently as we're recording this, but by the time you hear it, it'll have been out for a while. Breakins is another hyperpop artist that just released an album called Hypochondriac that's very, very creative and emotional and great. So he's fucking an incredible musician. Everyone should listen to him. That's all I got, boys.
All right. Well, as previously mentioned, we're covering Blade, which released in August 21st, 1998. Written by David S. Goyer, directed by Stephen Norrington, and shot by Theo Van de Sande. I also wanted to say real quick, stay tuned. At the end of the episode, we're going to go over Blade, releasing in 1998, marks the last movie we're going to cover from the 1900s. After that, we get into the 2000s. So we're going to kind of catch up with where we are so far, where we rate all the movies we've watched to this point for this. So that'll be at the end. Anyway, stars Wesley Snipes as Blade, Stephen Dorff as Deacon Frost, Chris Christopherson as Whistler, and Bush Wright as Karen, Donnell Logue as Quinn, and Sanaa Lathan as Vanessa. I also like to call Chris Christopherson Pissofferson, or say that if you're upset. So do that what you will. And then I just wanted to do a quick background on what we mean when we say this is our third time. It has been weeks since we have watched Blade for this episode. We are damn close to me calling it quits and just sending out a Blade is dope tweet. And that's the podcast for it. But I am determined to make this work. The first time we tried to record right after we watched, weeks ago, and Matt bumped his computer, everything came unplugged. We were only 10 minutes in, but it was kind of late-ish, and we were all like a little tired, so we figured let's just do it another day. Due to scheduling conflicts, it took us a while to reschedule. And then, like 97% of the way through the podcast, Jason's laptop crashed, and we lost all of his audio. So everything we had done was unusable, resulting in us recording essentially a full episode and not being able to use it. And then again, due to scheduling conflicts, it was hard to find time. We thought we found time one day, but then my mother, who is also Jason's mother, who Jason still lives with, had a party. So then it was too noisy to record. So, and then more time passed, and now we are finally trying again. So, we'll see how this goes, but just in case anyone was curious, this is the episode from hell.
We'll see if we even make it through this time.
Do we?
Yeah, so if this episode is complete shit,
That's why.
know that we're aware, but we're sorry.
We're just
And
done
we
with this.
tried.
No, we're not
We have
sorry.
we have spent so much time attempting to talk about Blade on recording that, like, as much as I love this movie, my energy to do this again is limited.
Yes.
Does anyone want to talk? Usually we start off, talking about prior experience with the character, with the movie, which we did do
Multiple times.
Yeah, I'll make it quick.
Yeah.
First time I watched this was I always go to New York Comic Con with Sean and my dad, and formerly Jason. The year of COVID, we couldn't go, so we all watched the Blade trilogy instead. That's the first weekend of October, so it kind of fit both comic booky and also October-y, with vampires and all that. Binged all 3, loved them, and that was my first experience with the movie. I don't have a lot of experience with Blade comics, but yeah.
Yes, the same thing for me. Next.
I had seen this when I was little from time to time, but never actually fully watched through it. So first time, I would say first full time where I could remember everything was same as you guys. We watched it all together, and then we watched the rest of them, and it was a beautiful time. And now we've seen it a lot more.
I have no prior experience. Move on.
Okay.
We're just gonna speed through this one.
Matt was so enthusiastic about this being the popping of his blade cherry the first time we tried to do this, and then even the second time we tried to do this. And at this point, I think Matt is like, we need to get this done for technicality, and that's all that matters.
Matt doesn't even remember anything about the movie.
Honestly, if you ask me anything I said in the previous 2 times we've gone through this, I forget all of them. And somehow I'll find a way to try and remember them, but I don't think this is going to be nearly as good as the other times.
We'll do our best, but let's just be up front. We all do love this movie. Like, we all seem really done in the way we seem done when we talk about a shit movie. Blade fucking rules. But it's hard to recreate something you've done before.
We're just done with the process of
this episode.
It's hard to create something when you don't remember what you created in the first place.
And let me explain something to you guys. Like, when it just becomes a task, like now recording this episode is just a task. It doesn't feel fun anymore. It's just like, oh, we have to do this because we shit the bed twice.
Exactly. I usually look forward to this. I have so much fun doing this with you guys, but now I'm like, well, here's the thing. I did this already.
Exactly.
Okay. Anyway, without further ado, it's 1967. A pregnant woman's attacked by a vampire, causing her to go into premature labor. Doctors are able to save her baby, but the woman dies. 30 years later, the child has become the vampire hunter Blade, who is a human-vampire hybrid that possesses the supernatural abilities of the vampires without any of their weaknesses, except for the recruit, for the requirement to consume human blood. Blade raids a rave club owned by the vampire Deacon Frost. Police take one of the vampires to the hospital, where he kills Dr. Curtis Webb and feeds on hematologist Karen Jensen and escapes. Blade takes Karen to a safe house where she is treated by his old friend Abraham Whistler. Whistler explains that he and Blade have been waging a secret war against vampires using weapons based on their elemental weaknesses, such as sunlight, silver, and garlic. I think of note, in terms of cool weaponry, you have Blade's sword that is made of silver, and his health expands if a vampire touches it. And they have silver hollow tips filled with garlic. Karen is now marked by the bite of a vampire, and both he and Blade tell her she needs to leave the city. So the movie comes out really swinging, honestly, with this like woman in labor bleeding out of her neck and them trying to save this baby, and then cuts from there into the blood rave scene. I think it really hits you over the face with exactly what you're going to expect right away, and I really like that. But what are your guys' first impressions watching the movie, with both the flashback opening and then the blood rave?
I honestly don't remember anything about the giving birth to a baby scene, but I do remember the first scene with the blood rave party. It had immaculate vibes. And the guy who was constantly questioning like, where the fuck are we going? But a few kisses in the mouth from the vampire lady was able to convince him otherwise. So you know where his priorities are. And man, this whole movie screams 2000s in like not a bad way at all. It just feels like I'm watching a 2000s music video of just like a rave music video.
It's one of those things where it's like, you know how people feel nostalgic about the 80s and like you have everything that you can remember from that? This is that, but for the early 2000s, where nothing of it feels like negative. It just feels nostalgic, at least to us anyways, I can say, considering when we were born.
So this movie came out in 98.
Yeah, I know it came out in 98, but it still has a lot of that, like, what eventually does become the early 2000s feel.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
vibe.
It feels like a precursor to all of that.
Yeah, and honestly,
it was ahead of its time.
You look back to it, and you honestly think to yourself, I really shouldn't enjoy this, but somehow you do.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, I think it's aged fairly well, but I think Matt's comparison to it being like a music video is very accurate, because this blood rave is literally, it's like an empty meatpacking warehouse, and the sprinklers shoot blood, and then the vampires feed on the humans they lure there, and then Blade just comes in and starts killing people, and it's like right away you know exactly what this dude's about, because the only thing he cares about is killing these vampires. And he's just so cool. The black leather, he's just so cool. The plain face, but I think you guys also hit the nail on the head talking about like it being kind of distinctly different from everything we've seen before. Blade, and then subsequently the two movies we'll cover after this, X-Men and Spider-Man. were really like the start of a pivot point, I think, for what superhero comic book movies are. And this is kind of a change from what we've seen in the past with the Reeves movies, the Burton and Schumacher movies, and everything else we've covered. It's pretty distinct, and it's like the starter of a lot of the tropes we're going to see in the genre going forward as we break them down.
Yeah, this movie is very similar to like a early Sylvester Stallone or like a early Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, in which it's basically the actor just playing a badass. And honestly, it has much more style than those early Sylvester Stallone's or Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. Mostly because most of them are not so great.
I was going to say, I also find, going kind of back to the blood rave scene, a lot of it's actually fairly creative in little ways that I actually really appreciate. Like, again, the blood rave scene does a great job of, like, building up the world, kind of like that these vampires exist and are kind of hidden in the background of stuff. And that's just from one scene. You get a fair amount of, like, a lot of ideas behind, like, just stuff that's going on. The movie does a good job at managing to pack in a lot of information in tiny areas, but also make it fun and creative and keep it flowing. It just that scene, I feel like, does definitely deserve a lot of credit for setting a lot of the movie up.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually gonna say something similar. Like, first of all, that scene is just incredibly fun to watch. I think it's one of the most fun action scenes ever, like, that I've seen. But on top of that, like, it immediately kind of gives you the tone of what the movie's gonna be like. Like, immediately from that scene, you kind of understand the vibe of the movie. And I think that that's cool that, like, right from the beginning, it's just kind of like, it comes out swinging with what it is.
And we gotta say, though, that most of the action was practical. The only, like,
which is sick.
CGI was when he, like, kills the vampires and they're supposed to vaporize, which you can't do to an actual person without being arrested for either manslaughter or murder. So what they did was they used CGI, and it's not necessarily bad. It's more dated. So, like,
yeah, it's just,
like, you look at that and like you wince a little bit, but it's not like watching like a really shitty CGI film these days, like that Italian, not just that Italian Pinocchio movie, Italian cinema in general.
Yeah, it's not that it's bad, it's just that it's a movie that was made in 1998 and it looks like a movie that was made in 1998.
Yeah, and the action is, because it's so well choreographed and it's well balanced, I think, in terms of switching between martial arts and like hand-to-hand stuff and then weaponry, with blades like guns and swords. But it is also talking about it being really driven around Wesley Snipes as Blade. He is such a star in this movie, and this is kind of a product of a bygone era that you don't see much anymore, of action movies being driven by an action movie star. Movie stars in general aren't that much of a thing these days. Movies are really sold off of IP and not by the stars. And while obviously this is IP, this was not being sold as it's based off a Marvel comic back in 1998. This was being sold at watch Wesley Snipes kick ass in a way that, like, these days the only real action star, like, movie star, I'd say, is Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise made Top Gun Maverick make all the money in the world. Tom Cruise is powering the Mission Impossible franchises, and people go see those movies to see Tom Cruise do crazy stuff. Obviously, very different style of action than what you have here and what you have from, like, your Stallone, Van Damme, Schwarzenegger era. But this is still kind of something that, like, when you watch it present day, it feels weirdly refreshing because you don't have movies that do that angle anymore of just, like, here is a guy that is awesome and it's that simple. And it sounds shallow, but you can put well-made craft around it and it makes for a really good movie, and it just draws your eye and is compelling when you have a lead like that.
Well, it's just a natural evolution. Those movies were really made to feel egos. While the Tom Cruise movies, they are made to, like, more for, like, spectacle, and bringing in that spectacle using practical effects. And that's what makes the Tom Cruise movie so amazing, because you don't know what position Tom Cruise is going to put himself in that might kill him, which is very interesting.
Tom Cruise is crazy, man.
Yeah, he's
Shout out
actually
Tom
crazy, which
Cruise.
makes sense of why he does all these death-defining stunts.
Shout out Tom Cruise.
Mm-hmm. Just don't die in an airplane accident, please. We need more movies.
I think he needs to keep making Mission Impossible until he dies doing it.
Yeah, that's fair. I feel like that's probably in his contract. He's definitely got like a death clause.
I bet it's in his contract
And
that if he
it
dies, they still
definitely
release it.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. It definitely says, like, send it no matter what. If I get splattered against this wall jumping out of this plane, put the movie out, dog.
Right around it. Paul Walker me.
Yeah.
Okay, so at a meeting of the Council of Purebred Vampire Elders, Frost, the leader of a faction of younger vampires, and non-pure blood younger vampires in particular, is rebuked for trying to incite a war between vampires and humans. As Frost and his kind are not natural-born vampires, they are considered socially inferior than those who were born not bit. Meanwhile, returning to her apartment, Karen is attacked by police officer Krieger, who is a familiar, a human loyal to vampires. Blade subdues Krieger and uses information for him to locate an archive that contains pages from the Vampire Bible. Krieger informs Frost of what happened, and Frost kills Krieger. Frost also has one of the elders executed and strips the others of their authority, in response to the earlier disrespect shown to him at the Council of Vampires. Meanwhile, Blade comes upon Pearl, a morbidly obese vampire, and tortures him with the UV light into revealing that Deacon wants to command a ritual where they use 12 pure blood vampires to awaken the blood god, Lamagra, and Blade's blood is the key. So at this point, you're kind of getting into the plot of the movie, which I find generally pretty simple. It's, just kind of your typical, there's a prophecy, of course Blade's involved type of thing. But that said, it's simple, but it's kind of effective because with this type of movie, as we talked about it, with it being really driven by Wesley Snipes, I don't think you need a really complex plot, and you just need some simple lore like that, even if it's kind of run-of-the-mill. And you have a situation where I think Frost and Blade are good mirrors of each other. What's your guys' take on that?
Yeah, I will fight you, Jason. I will kill you.
Go ahead then. Jesus Christ.
The one thing that I Yes, Matt?
Nothing.
Would you like to go?
If you'll let me.
Or would you like to die?
No, I'll kill you first, and then I'll kill myself.
Somebody go.
Because in
Sean,
that case,
go.
it'll be fair.
Anyways, so the one thing that I really like that we kind of get more of an idea of is that, like, the one thing that comes up a lot is that Blade is kind of the first comic book movie that kind of really pushes the MCU in a way, is what springboarded it a lot, because this was the first time that Marvel had a successful comic book movie, and especially one that you see a lot of, like, the tropes that we see today in. Things like, the villain being essentially the antithesis of what the hero is. You see a lot of, generally a lot of what a lot of origin movies kind of take and what kind of tropes that they use. You kind of see a lot of that in here, but this one kind of, I want to say that this one really gets away with a lot of that. One, because it's just a fairly well-rounded and well-made movie, but two, because it's like the first incarnation we kind of see a lot more of this. And the first time we kind of see, like, these tropes become a lot more of a trope within the comic book movie scene. So it's interesting to see how this all, like, kind of starts and how it kind of springboarded everything else, and to just see that, like, you see Blade's signature on everything up to this point in time, where you just can look back at any comic book movie and really see, like, a lot of just stuff from this got really put into everything else.
Yeah, I think, like, my feelings on the plot, like Jake said, it is a pretty, like, simple, basic plot, but my thoughts are, like, the movie is, like, stimulating and amusing enough and entertaining enough in all of its other aspects, like the things Sean was talking about, and how it feels like Blade throughout the whole movie, and he has his cool vibe about him, and all of that makes it a great movie. So if it had a fantastic plot, that would have been cool, but I don't care that it doesn't. You feel me?
No. Anyway.
Okay.
So just like a few things I do want to mention. I like, even though the plot is simple, there is like a few subversions of like old cliches. One of them being that the prophecy and like Blade is like the chosen one, but in this case he's a chosen one to bring fucking doom to the entire planet. I do like that. There was one more, but I am trying to think about it, but I nearly fell asleep, and that's the reason why you guys can't see it, but I was laying down this entire time, and I just got up because I had to prevent myself from falling asleep. Otherwise Jake would get very mad at me.
Yeah.
I don't think Jake would be the only one.
Yeah, rightfully so, asshole.
Well, while you try to think about whatever it was you were thinking of,
I just found out.
Go for it.
So, spoilers: when Whispers dies,
Whistler.
Huh? Wait.
Whistler is the character's name.
Oh shit. Okay.
Whispers.
Whistler.
Abraham Whispers.
Well, when Whistler dies, Blade is very mournful of him. He shows a lot of vulnerability.
I'm sorry,
which is not
I can't
that
stop
common
laughing
in
at that.
other films like the other Sylvester Stallone or Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, with like the exception of like Rocky. But Rocky's like a yet another like exception to those movies because Sylvester Stallone was fucking broke when he made those movies, so he didn't really have much of an ego. You know what? That is a very interesting retrospective on the Rocky movies, of like just seeing like every single entry of that series. You can see the mindset he was in as it progressed. But this is not about Rocky. This is about Blade, so I won't divulge into film study or theories and stuff like that for the sake of time.
Okay, well, I just also wanted to talk about, like, the blurb we just went through also mentioned Pearl, and in regards to Pearl, it's the type of thing that nowadays Pearl would be done with CGI, most likely, and it would look so much worse. But instead, Pearl is one of the subtle things of world building that this movie does, and I compared this movie to John Wick. Obviously, this came, over a decade before the first John Wick movie, but I think they're very similar in the way the John Wick films lay out this secret world of assassins in New York and across the world that's like just outside the plane of view for the average person. This kind of does that comparably way earlier with Blade and the World of Vampires in the city, with these, secret vampire areas in the back of establishments and characters like Pearl, who's only in one scene but is this like morbidly obese, naked vampire character that they torture with UV lights, and it's done practically and it looks so real, and it's the type of thing that's not done today. And it's especially impressive because this movie only had a $45 million budget, which in today's money is like just over $82 million. And like, while if you don't like think, obviously like anybody in the world most people would kill to get that much money, compared to like these like 200, 300 even million dollar blockbusters superhero movies that come out now, that is dirt cheap. That is like ridiculously cheap for a movie like this, and it just makes it to me all the more impressive how good the action comes across, how good the practical effects, whether it be with choreography or something like Pearl, come across. And just the mention of that character, as beef as it is, I just wanted to appreciate the visuals of that and the world building of that, because the movie does a really good job at making you feel like, yeah, vampires are everywhere in secret and they've been there forever.
I mean, it makes sense.
Also
though.
incredible.
I'm going first this time. So basically saying that they did a very good job of, like you said, building a world, especially with a limited budget. And if you really think about it, there's no like grand sets in the film. Like the things they need to build, like a lot of like the set places, they take place in like just a rundown building. There's not really like unique sets until like the end, and in which there are only like a few select rooms of that mythical building that you see, and especially in like the final fight scene, all of it takes place in this one set, but everything around it with like the action and like the set pieces, right? It all distracts you from like thinking about like how small this place really is too much. Yeah, kudos to Blade. All right, you go, Sean.
I was gonna say it's kind of surprising to see like just the change in, you know, specifically the budget that you were just talking about, Jake. It's just interesting to see how like you have a movie like this where it was essentially done on what was considerably a dirt cheap budget compared to now where you have superhero movies that are getting anywhere from 200 million to 300 million per a budget, which is just impressive to see how far things have come.
Yeah, so later at the hideout...
Fuck you, Jake.
Really moved off that point.
Well, I just didn't have anything else to say, and no one else seemed to.
Yeah, I didn't.
Later at the hideout, Blade injects himself with a special serum that suppresses his urge to drink blood. However, the serum is beginning to lose its effectiveness due to overuse. While experimenting with the anticoagulant EDTA as a possible replacement, Karen discovers that it explodes when combined with vampire blood. She manages to synthesize a vaccine that can cure the infected, but learns that it will not work on Blade. Karen is confident that she can cure Blade's bloodthirst, but it would take years worth of treating it. Frost and his men attack the hideout, infect Whistler, and abduct Karen. When Blade returns, he helps Whistler commit suicide. So at this point, I want to talk about both Whistler's death in general, as well as, along with Whistler and Karen, the supporting cast of this movie. We've talked a lot about Wesley Snipes as Blade, but I think one of the reasons that character works so well as a simplistic character is the supporting cast. That starts with Whistler, with the only character that you really get a full sense of any kind of meaningful emotional attachment in Blade's life, to the point of, while they are kind of cold, hard individuals, and they're both very driven to their sole mission of killing vampires, when Whistler has to be killed so that he won't turn into one, you really feel like it is more personal than ever than Blade, and that it is almost reflective of his whole vendetta started because his mom died before he was born because of vampires, and this is his father figure who has now died because of vampires. And I think without Whistler's unique wit adjacent to Blade's, it doesn't work as well, and I think Chris Christopherson really hits that role perfectly.
Don't you mean Whispers?
Oh yeah, Whispers.
Well,
Whispers.
like what you said, you need personalities, especially interesting one, when your character is essentially a leather boot with a sword. But you know, the characters are interesting. Whistler is a very interesting character. What was her name? Karen. Her name's Karen Jensen.
Dr.
Right?
Jensen or something like that.
Yeah, Dr.
Karen.
Jensen. She is a very interesting character because she serves as, you know, the audience's point of view as someone who is completely new to this world, and I feel like her not only her actions are appropriate, but she does like place a few ideas in Blade's mind of like questioning some things here and there, especially when it comes to like curing his vampirism, if I remember correctly. And that's interesting. Also, Deacon emits huge fuckboy energy, absurd amount. Like you'll see no one else walk around shirtless or like a unbuttoned down shirt as much as he does.
Yeah, he exudes just like that sickly emo boy, late 90s, early 2000s energy.
He looks like he only has a few days to live every time I see him because of how fucking pale he is.
They should put Playboy Cardi in the new Blade movie.
I forget who that is.
Yeah?
Yeah, he has multiple songs about vampires, and that's just something I was thinking about just now.
Thanks for sharing.
Thanks for sharing.
Value your opinion.
Matt talked about Karen. She's also pretty important. Well, I think her character is pretty just like boilerplate POV. I think that role was pretty necessary to fill in the movie so that you have the fresh eyes that mirror yours in this vampire world. Jumping ahead to but that's actually less present in the other Blade movies because it's not as necessary anymore because we've already been introduced. And then it's also the other thing about Karen that's interesting to me is that she's not really a love interest. She fills the role that like typically in this movie would be the love interest for your big macho hero, but Blade is like completely disinterested. It seems he basically only cares about killing vampires, and has like zero desire. There's really no, I'm not going to say there's not any kind of like chemistry or tension between them, because I think there is, but also it seems that it's very clear that neither of them, and especially not Blade, are actually interested in it being anything romantic or even really sexual, because this man has a mission and that's all he cares about. But they never kiss in this movie. There's no, it's just, she just like helps him get and she's a capable person. She's like a vital part of their success, which is always refreshing because that's not always the case. But it's interesting that they went that non-traditional route of having Blade just like not give a fuck about any of that.
There is something funny about, like, there's even moments in the movie where it seems like, where you could very easily be like, oh, this would be a time where they would like kiss or whatever, and like you would have that romantic tension, and then the movie just doesn't do it, and I think that's kind of funny.
If anything, I appreciate it because it's just not needed.
Yeah, it's not needed, and like I do appreciate it for that reason, but it's also funny just like as someone who's seen so many movies where there's kind of forced romance, or even if it's not forced, like whatever. So like seeing this, like you can almost see the times where it could easily be there, and then it's just like, but nah, they're just killing vampires.
Instead, Blade power proses and puts his sunglasses on.
Exactly, like the hard motherfucker that he is.
And I think this extends to the villains as well. We talked about Deacon Frost as a mirror of Blade, but I do think he's a little bit more interested in like some comic book villain mirrors are just literally evil version with the powers. I do think when you deal with the themes of Blade's self-hatred for being a vampire, and then you have Deacon on the other side who has this kind of inferiority complex about not being enough of a vampire because he's not pure, and wanting to kind of restructure vampire society around that. Also then just visually, it hit Blade as a black man and Deacon Frost is a very, very pale white man. And coming from very different perspectives of him, Deacon Frost, having this inferiority complex again, despite the fact that he's still in like the penthouses, even if he's not in the room. And like, meanwhile, Blade was, cast out in the first place. He's never been really welcome. So I think that works well. And then one more side character that has to be brought up is Quinn from Donnell Logue, because we haven't talked about him, but every time there's an action sequence, he's there and Blade fucks him up, and every single time he like cuts his arm off and mutilates Quinn, but never can quite kill him, and it's a really good running gag. And Donnell Logue just plays a really, really wonderful job playing this like dumb, skeezy vampire dirtbag idiot that Blade just gets to repeatedly fuck up, and it never gets old for me. So I just kind of want to give a shout out, because that is a special kind of supporting cast performance, I think, from what we've seen so far. That is one of my favorite side characters we've seen.
It's such a fun little gag.
Yeah, he's just such a fucking idiot, and it's funny. Like, he is, like, throughout the movie kind of, like, the most expendable person in terms of, like, value to his side.
And yet he always survives.
And yet he keeps surviving and just being annoying and stupid and getting fucked up in the process.
So you can enjoy how much torture he was in throughout the movie. And when he finally gets the upper hand, it blows up in his face. It's so...
And then what does he say? He says he's gonna be like a naughty vampire god.
Oh, God, yes.
Yes, that's ridiculous. I don't know if I think it would be funnier if that was like ad-libbed and like not scripted, or if I think it's funnier if someone actually wrote in the script, I'm gonna be a sexy or a naughty vampire god. Sorry, not sexy. There's nothing sexy about vampires.
Tell that to Twilight fans.
Oh, Robert Pattinson though.
Not the other guy though.
Batman.
The other guy is overrated as fuck. The werewolf fuckboy.
Oh, he is overrated. Taylor Lautner.
I don't even know him, but I know he sucks.
He also played Shark Boy in Shark Boy and Lava Girl.
Okay, well, anyway. So back to the death of Whistler. That is one of the better moments, I think, directorially and cinematography-wise, just in terms of Blade is staged in a way where he is always kind of perpendicular to Whistler's body and never really fully aligns with it, because there's still this cold distance. This guy doesn't really let his emotions out, but the closest you get is him slowly taking his sunglasses off and seeing his eyes and seeing just like a glint of emotion, but he never really looks down and never really looks at Whistler. And it's a really very well done thing. And I particularly bring this up because obviously Whistler's death is a really pivotal point in the story of the movie and in the emotions of the movie. But then I think it's worth talking about the director and cinematographer of this movie because, and we discussed this previously, so sorry guys, but I just want to bring it up again. Stephen Norrington, the director, did almost nothing after this. His filmography is very limited. He also did comic book movie-wise League of Extraordinary Gentlemen in 2005, which is, I believe, his last film. He's done... When you go to his IMDb, you get special effects before you get director work, because he just hasn't done a lot. He did a movie before Blade in 1994 called Death Machine, and then after Blade in 2001, he did Last Minute, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen in 2003, and then nothing. And he's still alive. He just kind of made this fucking classic movie, in my opinion, in terms of like the action genre, and then didn't do much else. But he clearly, which is interesting, because I don't know if that was what the issue, if it's a behind the scenes thing, if he just didn't want to, but like the guy's clearly talented, and I think he does a really good job in this movie. And then similarly, Theo Van de Sande, he's still very much working, but if you look at his IMDb for cinematography, it's nothing that crazy. Just a lot of movies you haven't heard of from the 90s and early 2000s, and then these days he does television. But it's funny because both of these guys are people that I really feel like could be big names, and they're not.
I applaud him for making one masterpiece movie and just saying peace and walking off in the sunset. That's what a way to go.
In regard to Stephen Norrington, I know that like a lot of past this and past like late 2000s, 2010s, he mostly had a situation where he just, a lot of stuff that he had just wasn't getting realized, like a lot of projects and stuff. So it seems like he still does stuff, and then from what I have seen is that he has been like working on independent stuff since, like not specifically like making movies, but like on his own has been specifically working on releasing a film using miniatures, and that's the last I've heard of him.
Well, I hope that comes out, because I would like to see this man make a comeback. So Blade, when Blade attempts to rescue Karen from Frost's penthouse, he's shocked to find that his mother is still alive, who reveals that she came back the night she was attacked and was brought in by Frost, who appears and reveals himself as the vampire who bit her. Blade is then subdued and taken to the Temple of Eternal Night, where Frost plans to perform the summoning ritual of La Magra. Karen is thrown into a pit to be devoured by Webb, who has transformed into a decomposing zombie-like creature. Karen injures Webb and escapes. Blade is drained of his blood, but Karen allows him to drink from her, enabling him to escape. Frost completes the ritual and obtains the powers of La Magra. Allowing him to recover. Frost completes the ritual and obtains the powers of La Magra. Blade confronts Frost after killing all of his minions, including his mother. During their fight, Blade injects Frost with all of the syringes, and the overdose of EDTA causes his body to inflate and explode, killing him, which is definitely the most dated CGI part. So, a number of things in that second to last paragraph that I think we have to talk about. A, the reveal that Blade's mother is alive. B, the subsequent, not really covered in that paragraph, but tension between Blade and his own mother. The climactic fight, and just that general kind of finale in general. So, what do you guys want to start with?
Did we talk about the new solution that blows vampires up before? Or this is the first time that was mentioned?
Yeah, we talked about Karen helping create something that can cure vampires, and the EDTA can be used to kill them and whatnot, yeah.
Awesome.
Were you going somewhere with that?
That's it.
I guess I could. Alright, I will.
And that's it.
So...
we had to force Matt to speak.
It was really cool that they showed, basically, that this solution could blow up vampires. And the first instance of this was two unfortunate vampire victims who just stumble upon Blade's path. and then he just goes, I think he like ninja shurikens them right into their fucking necks, and then they slowly turn into very ripe tomatoes, and off screen go pop, pop, and you see splatters of blood everywhere. I like that cut because the bloating part that wasn't as dated as like the exploding part, and they made like two very smart cutaways. Well, not two cutaways. They made one cutaway, and then you see like the aftermath of the explosions, and it was very nice. And that's it.
I thought the ending was cool.
That's awesome.
Well said.
What else can you say?
This is great. Well said. End of the podcast. We're over. It's done. Jason said it's cool.
I mean, I don't have much else. It was cool.
I guess we could talk.
I think. All right. Well, yeah. Okay. Listen.
What about the sexual tension between
All
Blade
right.
and his
I
mom?
kind of forgot that Jake mentioned that. That shit's weird. But the rest of the ending is pretty cool.
Yeah, so with the reveal that Blade's mom is alive, which is, you know, a fine enough reveal, and I think it's effective, and it, you know, plays at the emotions of your lead and all that. It comes with this really weird, like, his mom has an age, so she's about his age, and she's like seemingly tried to seduce him onto their side to side with them, and like while there's
She's
this
definitely speaking to him in a weirdly sensual way.
very close to his face, it's very clearly meant to be that way. Like if you think we're like reading into it, and you haven't seen the movie, watch the movie. It's weird. And I think it's because there's this undercurrent of like kind of inbreeding within vampire culture with this whole pureblood obsession, and Blade being this like ultimate vampire that doesn't have the weaknesses and all that. But it's too far. It is a step too far for something that is a very, very background undercurrent kind of idea that is like way off in the distance. And then all of a sudden at the end, you have like, you're sitting there looking at the screen like, are they about to have incest? It's jarring and uncomfortable and just all kinds of a bad decision.
It's just weird, man. Like, that shit makes me uncomfortable. Like, even in Star Wars, I feel weird when Leia kisses Luke, even though they didn't know. But I know is the thing, and I just don't like it. And that's like the most popular form of pornography these days, and I don't know what these fools are doing that they think like that's like becoming acceptable. I'm not with that. Listen, I'm all for anti-kink shaming, but if you're okay with incest, you gotta hit the road, buddy.
You know,
What are you doing, step bro?
you know, Blade being the hero he is, says no, and when he is freed, he stabs his mother in the gut for being sexual. And so,
How wild would it have been after having no interest in Karen all movie if he was like, yeah, I'll fuck my mom though?
Okay, now I'm starting to come around because that would have been funny.
No, but again, honestly, it's just weird. It would have been so much better if they just had done like an emotional plea of like, hey, I am your mother and I'm alive, come be with me. I don't know why they had to
it felt
throw in the sexual. I don't even know. They're not undertones, they're overtones.
It
it's
felt
so weird.
like they were like, oh, we have a young, attractive actress, so we should... Because, it was the late 90s, so I feel like they were just trying to, like, be seductive with, like, female actresses there, and then they just didn't...
Or maybe David S. Goyer's a freak.
Or that.
I really just wonder how many people it had to pass by. Like, the actors had to know, obviously. So, like, why did they think... Who thought this was okay?
She was a little too breathy with her tone when she was talking to him. It wasn't cool, man.
she was also touching him
I
in
wasn't.
inappropriate places to touch your son.
Yeah, she was a little handsy and a little breathy for my liking. I don't think mothers should talk to their children like that. Call me old-fashioned.
That's the official statement of this podcast. The whole, we endorse that back.
Culturally illiterate 2022. Call us old-fashioned, but we're against incest.
Remember, kids, wincest is not true.
Okay, on a less weird, more positive, less uncomfortable note, I do think the climax in general is really good. The finale fight, it's a pretty simple set with this like deep cavernous kind of like, I don't want to say it's a cavern because it's all like, it's all like smoothish. There's like statues, like it's clearly been lived in. They're not in like a cave, but it's just deep and there's a lot of different levels to it. And Blade just kicking a bunch of vampires' asses throughout it. It continues in a movie filled with really great action and choreography. It continues the trend, and I think it peaks at the end with the best stuff. The fight between him and Frost is good. You have the like the reason Wesley Snipes is so good at playing a superhero is comic books are poses. You're capturing like big moments in your art. And Wesley Snipes has the ability that I have not seen any other actor do of being able to like stop as if he's in like a spread page of a comic book and that pose and that look at the camera and make it work. And he knows exactly what he's doing. And like the peak of that is when he beats Frost and catches his sunglasses midair and puts them on his face in slow-mo, but not in like slow-mo like it's slowed down, like he's just doing it slowly. And the movie's full with great one-liners and great moments. I love in the finale when he's mouths what the fuck when he thinks he's cut Frost in half and he reconnects with the blood because he seems to be like bloodbending or some shit. But I do think it's a good case of sticks the landing. It would, when you have a movie that has incredible action throughout, sometimes, it's not unheard of that a movie kind of has a less than stellar finale, but I don't think it's the case here.
I agree.
The quotes, this movie is very quotable. I totally forgot to mention that. There are a lot of great quotes.
Yeah, there are so many beautiful quotes in this movie. It's fantastic.
Last short paragraph, Karen offers Blade to help Blade cure himself. Instead, he asks her to create an improved version of the serum so he can continue his crusade against vampires. In a brief epilogue, Blade confronts a vampire in Moscow. So, ending pretty simple. He gonna keep fighting vampires. I don't think there's a ton to say there, except the Moscow ending always makes me laugh because it just feels so random that he's suddenly in Russia killing a vampire. And I sort of get what they're saying, but it does feel like a little out of the blue that he's in Russia.
Do you see how pale Russians are,
It's
though?
funny,
They're all
though.
vampires.
No, I think it's funny, though, because it's just like, why? It's so random, and it doesn't add much. It's just like, why did they feel
There
the
was no need
to
except for
film
to give him a
this?
cool
And I
pose,
kinda
which
like
is
that.
very fitting for Blade.
I like it.
It also doesn't set up a sequel, which I also love.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
this
has
is
nothing
before,
to do
like,
with
everything
the next
was
one.
sequel bait.
Spoilers, I guess, but
And it's nice. It's a nice change of pace.
but it feels like sequel bait, but it's not.
Well, because it's just it's just showing that he's still killing vampires. But Matt's opened up a great segue to talk about Dr. Michael Morbius at your service. Because as
At
Sean
your
previously
cervix.
mentioned, there was a filmed ending that you can find online that technically featured Morbius, played by none other than the director himself, Stephen Norrington.
Jared Leto. Oh,
The original intent was to end the movie on the scene with Karen on the rooftop where she says, make me an improved version of the serum so I can keep fighting. And she was going to say something on the line. She says something along the lines of, well, it looks like you're on the clock. And in the distance, there's this man with with a long coat and hair blowing in the wind. And there's absolutely no way at all you could tell that was supposed to be Morbius or anybody other than just presumably a vampire. But the intent was for it to be Morbius. Stephen Norrington was there, was played the role, so to speak, but it seems likely that he was just kind of a stand-in until they cast him for the sequel. But they ended up scrapping that ending, inserting the Russia ending when they decided they didn't want to be locked in for a direction for the sequel. Of course, Norrington ends up not doing Blade 2, which is done by Del Toro. And also, I don't know legally where Morbius rights were, because obviously they're currently with Sony these days. And I believe they already, at this point, they already had the Spider-Man character rights. But I don't know if Morbius was maybe split between New Line, who made the original Blade movies, the way that the Maximals was split between Fox and Disney and stuff like that. So something to ponder, but just kind of a fun anecdote that the Russia scene is random because they just needed something to replace. They wanted something else at the ending since they were cutting the Morbius thing out. And then just talking about it not sequel baiting, it was a conscious choice to not sequel bait and to not be locked in creatively, which is I respect that.
Also, do you think they just
It was sadly
went
not
through
more
a
than
page
time.
of Marvel heroes and villains and just found the first vampire villain or anti-hero they found and be like, that's gonna be our villain for the next film?
Morbius is far and away the most prominent Marvel vampire other than maybe Blade, and I think you could even make a case that he's more prominent than Blade. So
At this point, I think he definitely
Not after
is.
this movie.
Matt may be right, but it didn't take them long to find Morbius if they didn't already know about him.
I think Morbius is definitely more prominent now after all the memes.
Oh yeah, it's Morbin time, baby.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to wrap up, favorite thing, least favorite thing, and would you recommend? I want to start. I love this movie so much, so I'm going to get my negatives out of the way. You could probably guess it. The weird incest vibes towards the end are my least favorite thing. Just wholly unnecessary, and also would just make the movie better if you played it more emotionally than that. My favorite thing are the poses and the one-liners from Blade and from other characters. Some highlights include the aforementioned when he mouths "What the fuck" to Deacon Frost. "Motherfucker, are you out of your damn mind?" when a cop shoots Blade after he just saved them. "The world you live in is just a sugar-coated topping." You tell him it's open season on all suckheads.
That's a good one.
Have the good grace to die with some fucking dignity. When Whistler saves Blade, he says, "Catch you fuckers at a bad time." And then in the weird Russia ending, when he ambushes the vampire to save a woman, he tells the vampire, catch you at a bad time." Jason previously mentioned Quinn saying, "I'm going to be a naughty vampire god." Just wanted to bring that up again. And then, of course, the best line in the history of cinema, "Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill." And of course I recommend this movie. Everyone should watch it. It's an action classic. Completely, if you like fun, watch Blade.
Yes. My favorite thing, there's a lot of things that I could say, but I think the main thing that I would have to pick is specifically the character design of Blade. I think he just looks so cool the whole movie. Like the haircut's cool. The long leather jacket's cool, the swords, like it just, everything looks exactly how you'd expect like a badass vampire hunter to look. You know what I mean? And I love that. My least favorite thing is incest. That goes for outside of this too. I'm not fond of it, but in the context of the movie, it was my least favorite thing. And I recommend this movie. It's very good. It's fun. It's a good time. Just watch it and enjoy yourself.
I guess I'm next.
Every time, baby.
Honestly, I don't know. I'm the one thing I'm glad about having some time between me popping my Blade cherry and now is that I have more time to process this movie, and I would say that I don't really have any negatives besides intentional incest, and that was very awkward, but that's really it. I mean, I guess my favorite thing about the movie is the tone, because these are like my favorite types of comic book movies, as in they don't take themselves too seriously and are very silly, but in a very good way. This is not like a Schumacher movie where it's like too silly, but it doesn't like go too far into like, oh, it's taking itself super seriously. No, it's very much aware of what it is, and it has a lot of fun, and I really enjoy it.
So you would recommend?
If you can't tell already, yes, I do recommend this movie. Just by me saying that,
There
I
we
don't
go.
have
Got
any
it.
complaints other than incest.
All right, yeah. So my feelings, I'm going to get the negative out of the way too. I really think the only thing that's really particularly bad is, like you've all said, the incest part's
across
kind
the
of weird.
board, baby.
Yes, we as a podcast
Look at us,
stand
we're all
against
against it.
incest. You please join our cause. We'll make a petition.
All right, Jesus. Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I can't think of anything else that's really negative about this movie. My favorite parts are obviously like the one-liners. The other thing that I will give a genuine favorite to is that like this is again the first springboard of like Marvel's. The formula that Marvel uses for a lot of the MCU movies. It's nice to see like kind of where all of this started and to get an idea of like where it all began and what kind of drove things to be the way they are today. So I really just appreciate that Blade was, you know, a front runner in that. And yes, I would definitely recommend this movie. It's lovely.
Before we close out for the day, talked about before, we're kind of, with us hitting a transition point in terms of the movies we cover, I wanted to just catch up on our thoughts so far, go through our rankings. We've covered, including both versions of Superman 2, we've covered 18 movies. So if you guys can just like run down your rankings, and then just if you have any general thoughts you want to share about the experience of watching these movies and what you've gathered, go for it. For me, there's like the category of bottom of the barrel. My least favorite thing is Supergirl so far, and then not much above it is Swamp Thing and Steel. And these movies have like almost no redeeming qualities in them, in my opinion. Then you get into the very bad of Superman 3, which is like a notch above those, but a notch below Howard the Duck and Superman 4, which are still awful. Takes me to the movies that are, I think there's some enjoyment to be had, but I wouldn't recommend them necessarily, of Superman and the Mole Man. And I did say I'd recommend Return of the Swamp Thing, but like with the caveat of not alone and not sober. And then at that point, we started getting into the stuff that I like. I like Batman Forever. I like Batman and Robin even more than that. I'm a big Schumacher defender. I think they're a lot of fun and hit what they're trying to do well, but they don't top Batman 66, which is like the peak of superhero camp. I like Superman the movie. It's a classic. It's a much watch. It's in the National Film Registry. Like, that's just like, if you like film, you should watch Superman. Superman 2, are both versions are neck and neck for me. I like either version a little bit better than the first Superman movie, but I do prefer the Donner cut. I think it's just a little bit more consistent in tone. And then I got Blade over the Superman movies. I think it takes really good creative liberties. I know it's not very accurate to Blade comics. Like, Whistler's a made-up character, but it does a lot of great stuff. And it's, again, you're getting into movies that are just doing what they're trying to do so well. And then my top 3 are all Batman. Batman 89, Batman Mask of the Phantasm, and my favorite movie so far is Batman Returns. I mean, my only real consensus so far, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, is just how essential camp is to superheroes and to comic books. So, and it's been interesting to me to see how it's evolved from a very kiddish way of Superman and the Mole Man and Batman into a slowly more mature way through this. It gets a little bit more mature Superman, but still lighthearted. And then by the time you get to things kind of go off the rails, but then the Burton Batman movies and Mask of the Phantasm redirect it, only for it to fall off the rails again with Steel and yeah. But Blade's definitely a switch in that regard to different tropes and kind of is a misfit, I think, for everything I just talked about. But this has been, it's been intriguing to see how this has evolved and how we're about to see a huge boom in terms of the number of these things that come out per year in the timeline that we're in.
Yeah, I can read my ranking next. I have, at the bottom spot, I have Steel, because that movie, it's Shaquille O'Neal in a rubber suit making free throws. I don't need to explain that further. Then I have Superman 4, Supergirl, then Swamp Thing, then Superman and the Mole Man just above that, then Superman 3, then I have, these ones were real close, but I think I like Howard the Duck a little bit less than the Return of the Swamp Thing, but they were real neck and neck with each other. They're both like pretty equally dog shit and also good, in my opinion at least. Then we have Batman Forever and Batman and Robin in that order, 10 and 9. Batman and Robin I like a little bit better. I just think it's just a little bit more fun and out there. Batman 66, classic, very funny. But then I have Superman 2, the theatrical cut at number 7, and Superman 2, the Donner cut at number 6. I put the Donner cut over the theatrical cut because I prefer seeing what the original artist intended than what the studio wanted, even though both versions are very good. Then I have Blade over those at number 5. Then I have Superman 1 at number 4. Then I have Batman Mask of the Phantasm at number 3, Batman 89 at 2, and Batman Returns at number 1, which it'll probably stay at for a while because I love that movie very, very much. It's one of my favorite movies ever. And so yeah, that's my number 1. There's been some dog shit moments in this podcast thus far, such as Steel and Supergirl and what have you, but there's also been some fucking amazing movies that I've got to rewatch, and I've had fun with those, and even some of the bad ones I've had fun with, but it's been good. It's been a good time.
Duh. Alright, I guess I'll go next with my list. So mine, I'm just going to start from the lowest to the top, just like the rest of us have. At my low end, I have Steel. which, it deserves to be there. Then I have Swamp Thing, the 1982 Swamp Thing, which deserves to be at the it just feels so bad looking through these bottom ones where it goes Steel, Swamp Thing, and then I have Supergirl, and then I have Superman 3, and then I have Superman and the Mole Men. It's just weird to see how much there's so many bad movies we've watched so far. Jesus. Superman 4 and the Quest for Peace. This is when we start to get to movies that after this, we start to get to movies that I'm kind of like, I enjoyed this a little bit. The Return of Swamp Thing, which was still not a good movie, but still enjoyable. That movie was goofy. I have Howard the Duck above that, surprisingly. Then there's Batman Forever, and this is where I actually start to get into like good movies I might watch again. Then we have Batman and Robin. Then we have Superman 2, and then we have Superman 2, the Donner Cut. Up above that is Superman. Then we have the 1966 Batman. And above that we have Blade. Beautiful, beautiful Blade. And then above that is Batman, and at number 1 I have Batman Returns. So Batman Returns has taken a nice spot for two of us. Did anybody else
All
have
three of
Batman
us so
Returns at
far.
number 1?
That's funny.
Matt, you gotta bring it home.
And you had what was the other thing I meant to ask you about? Oh, you have Batman 66 like really high. That was what, top 5?
I
I
loved it.
I love that movie too.
It holds a
I
goofy
love
place
that
in my
movie
heart.
too. It's just I'm surprised that it was even above like the Superman ones.
It's my number 4.
It's deserved. I'm not gonna discredit that. I love that movie. I just thought that was interesting.
Granted, my number 5 is also Superman.
Right.
So.
Well.
All right. Now, for all
Great of you to join us, Matt.
You all have been waiting for my list that I just
This
made.
dumb
like
mother-
5
You were a
minutes ago.
diversity hire.
Let's go. So let me tell you that these 3 movies are movies I absolutely despise, and there's nothing redeeming them whatsoever, and I wish they burn forever in the depths of hell. So I have at 17 Steel. Everyone has complained about already, and there's a reason why Shaquille O'Neal there's a reason why he can only act as a sellout these days. So then there's Supergirl. That movie is basically a girl going to school, and then she turns out to be Supergirl in the end, and she has to save the world. And her dying planet. I just so happened to forget about that. Just like Supergirl. There was also Howard the Duck. The only memorable thing about that was there was a scene with duck titties, and that's it, and a very awkward relationship between a humanoid duck and a woman. It was very awkward. And then we get to the movies that I kind of liked, but mostly dislike. Swamp Thing, the 1982 one, and the only thing I liked about that movie was the Swamp Thing roar. I loved that. Then there's Batman and Robin. I did not like it as much as the other guys, but I will admit that it's not complete garbage and that there is some redeeming qualities to it. Superman 3, there are some scenes here that I like, but honestly, maybe I should lower it on my ranks, but like I don't know. I don't know what to think about that movie.
It can change.
I have it at 11. Nah, too late for that. I have Superman the Mole Man. The reason why I have it so high is because it's mostly just out of like respect, because it was the very first movie, and there were some funny things, unintentional funny things about the movie, but I still enjoyed watching it, mostly due to just like it's just like the it's like watching like a black and white film. It's just to see like how far we've come. It's interesting in that aspect. And then we get to movies I like. Return to Swamp Thing. It's fantastic. You can just tell by the poster that you're in for a good time. Batman Forever.
I'm surprised how high you have that.
I liked it. Batman Forever. I liked that movie. The sexual tension is abnormally high in that movie, but Jim Carrey is fantastic. Yeah, that's really it. I like the movie. Then I have Blade. There's no need to go into detail as to why I like it. And then I have Batman 1966. I really like that movie. I love the lightheartedness. I love Adam West. And then there's Superman 1978. No need to go into detail why that movie's great. Then number 5, again the top 5, which is movies I absolutely love. Batman 1989 is my number 5. Just a great movie. Just watch it. Same thing goes for these other 4 movies. I have number 4, Superman 2, a worthy successor for Superman 1.
You prefer Donner, right?
And then I had, It's not Donner. No, this is number 4. Is the original. Then I have number 3, Batman Returns. That is a very good sequel to the original Batman, and I am so sad that it didn't do that well in theaters, and people complained about how violent it was. Ugh, I hate parents. Anyway, moving on. Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut. I really like the Richard Donner cut, with the exception of the ending. But Richard Donner wanted to change the ending, but the studio didn't let him, so I'm not going to fault Richard Donner for that. And my number 1 is Batman Mask of the Phantasm. I love animated Batman, and it's just a wonderful movie. You learn so much about the Batman character, and not just about Batman, but about Bruce as well. And it's just a great analysis movie. And if you are getting into Batman, I recommend watching this movie, because it'll go into reasons as to why so many people love the character so much. And that's it.
I just realized that I forgot Mask of the Phantasm. That's my number 3. So everything else before that.
And Matt, did you include Superman 4? Because I think you may have been short one.
Oh no, I did not. Well, Superman 4 would be probably in the lower tier of movies I fucking hate.
In your completely irredeemable one tier?
Yes.
Okay.
With steel
I didn't
and
like
shit.
anything about it. The steel shit. Sellout shit.
Well, on that note, thanks to Vo Moore, our buddy Alo, for our artwork. If you're interested in following us and continuing to check us out as we move forward with this, our ats for both Twitter and Instagram are at @illiterate_pod. Sorry, I had to burp. You can also reach us at cultureilliteratepod@gmail.com if you want to send us an email. Notably, Zach Nicholson, if you are a real person,
I love you.
thank you for the compliments on the pod, and we will take your, suggestion under advisement.
No, listen, we gotta read the whole email.
Okay, let me pull it up. Will you pull it up?
I
real
have
quick
it.
before we
I
close?
have it ready.
Oh, you have it ready? You know what? Here's what I'll say. Wait. Hold on. Our YouTube channel is Culture Illiterate Podcast, is the name of it. You can follow me on Letterboxd, JakeWalter98. Jason, plug your stuff and read the email.
All right, Zach Nicholson, I love you with my whole heart for this email that you sent us. He said, "Hey guys, think your podcast is pretty good. Just wanted to say you guys should start a Patreon and you should record videos of your pod. Would be pretty neat if you were all naked too. Best, Zach Nicholson." That's incredible. You made me laugh and I love you. You're the best. That being said, I made the intro-outro music for this podcast. It's from a song called Pins and Needles. I'm working on an EP. I don't know when it'll be out. I'm losing hope, but I'm getting there. I'm making progress on it. It'll be out. You can listen to the music I have out now on The Upsides on SoundCloud. Follow me on Instagram, The Upsides PA, on Twitter, _Upsides PA.
Well, next episode, we move into the decade of the 2000s with X-Men. Thankfully, we are, knock on wood, finally done with this cursed episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you guys in a couple weeks.